Hi, I'm Nathan, and you're listening to the Queer Conscious Podcast. All right, let me ask you something. When's the last time you felt really alive in the bedroom? And no, I'm not talking about waking up screaming from a nightmare. I'm talking about sex so good that you thought you met God. Because some of you have been with your partners for a very long time and are finding it difficult to keep it spicy. And others of you exchanged 2 messages with your sex partner before inviting them over 5 minutes later and still found it difficult. And where are they now? Who knows? But do you know who is here? Somatic sex and intimacy coach Court Vox is in the studio to talk about how to keep things spicy. Oh yeah, we're going to go there, but this conversation is more than just sexy time. This conversation is also about embracing your eroticism so that you can feel like an alive and vibrant human being. So if you're ready to deepen your intimacy and walk through life feeling sexier and more confident, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Hi, Court. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Nathan. Good to see you in the flesh.
Good to see you too. So tell me a little bit about what you do and your specialty.
Sure. So I am a somatic sex and intimacy coach. Somatic means of the body. And so what that means for me is, unlike a traditional coach or therapist, I work with clients in experiential learning, touch, and embodied practices to help them grow and learn about their body, their erotic bodies in particular. So that's the crux of my work.
Yeah, the experiential learning, at least for me, that's how I learn. I'm very kinesthetic. I'm very in my body. And have you seen a need for that growing in recent years, or has it always been there?
Yeah, I started my practice 6 years ago, really full-time 5 years ago. And, we had COVID in the middle of there. So that was, that was a little bump in the road. But really, I haven't seen a downturn in my business. So what I find is the majority of my clients have done quite a bit of work already. They've done psychotherapy, they've done ayahuasca, they've done all the things. And something that is still like a missing piece or a question mark for them is their connection to their eroticism or their sexuality. And so a lot of times it is just taking those pieces that already exist within them and connecting the dots to this particular piece of themselves. I don't know that our need has expanded. I do know that our touch needs in the world are really, really high at the moment, and people are not getting enough of it in all different facets.
Yeah.
I also think that, people are looking for alternative ways to expand and grow and heal. And it's not always through talking, right? Talking is a very, I don't want to get down this road too far, but it's like one way, and it's a very colonial approach to all things, right? We're going to talk about words with it. But if we're looking at more of a holistic approach that really is about a human being, right? We are more than just words. Like, to be able to describe things in colors and sounds and sensations and vibrations and symbols and dreams, right? This is a lot of how I invite clients to speak about the work, because sometimes words just fail us.
Yeah, and I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I don't have the words for certain experiences. Our language is very limited in what we can express.
Yeah. Yeah, oftentimes I'll say, if somebody is not able to speak words, I say, would you be able to draw me a picture or paint me something? Or I have an altar that has a lot of different objects on it, to be able to, will you tell me a story based on the objects that are on my table? Or can you describe a color that you're feeling or a sensation in your body as you recount this experience? It's giving people a different lexicon to be able to share themselves with other people.
Yeah. And how do you think that helps people when experiencing intimacy or pleasure?
For me, there are erotic experiences that I have had and that I continue to have that really don't have words to express them. They feel so big inside my body and outside of my body that words actually do it injustice. So
kind of like taking a picture of the moon with your phone.
Yeah, or like when you see this beautiful sunset and you take a picture of it with your iPhone, and then you look at it and you're like, there's just no way. It can't compare a feeling, A, and the translation of the image to the moment and the people that you're with, or just, yeah, all the things. You cannot translate truly a feeling always simply through words. And so sometimes it is an understanding that you cannot. And there is also an understanding that sometimes you just don't want to. And that's okay too. And I do caution clients as they're leaving my events or my immersions to be discretionary about what and who and how they share, and to really be with oneself and ask the question, is this just for me, or do I want to share this? Because a lot of times we share things just because we think we're supposed to, or we're really excited about something without really attuning to a moment and being like, actually, this is really private. And it's not that I'm ashamed of it or that I am fearful that I will be rejected, but really this is so special that I just want to keep it for myself. And that is perfectly okay.
I've had that experience too, where I have this amazing experience on this retreat or this trip, and I come back and I want to share that with someone. And when I do, sometimes I can't explain it right. They just don't get it. And you just get that look, or you just get that, and it sort of imprints on your experience. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. No, it was so wonderful before. So I totally get
or
that.
the opposite, where people are, know that you're having a retreat or on an experience and they want to know all the details. And it is that thing of checking inside, of being, asking that inquiry of, what do I want to share? And what feels like it would be nutritive to this person's learning and be nutritive to my overall experience? And if it's not, then you should just say, I'm not ready to share.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love it. Keep your secrets, as they say in Lord of the Rings. So we're here to talk about stagnancy in relationships. And, you work with a lot of couples, a lot of individuals. What does stagnancy look like in a relationship?
Yeah, I work with a lot of couples, gay and straight, who have been in really long-term relationships and often monogamous relationships. And I think, as gay and queer culture, we sort of assume that a lot of gay people are in poly or open dynamics, and that's not always the case. There are a lot of gay men and gay women who are in relationships that are monogamous, and that's really okay. It is a choice that people make, just like being in a poly relationship is a choice. What I'd say about being in really long-term relationships is that you have to understand that you are consistently changing, and so is your partner. And if you are expecting that your relationship, or this piece of yourselves, really, which I would consider like a third entity, it's like you and me, and then we have this thing in the middle called we, which is our relationship that we share. When we expect that to stay stagnant, and we are continuing to evolve, and our partner is evolving too, regardless of the rate at which we're evolving, because that can be different also. We have to take a look at this separate entity and ask the question, A, are we not paying enough attention to our individual lives, right? Have I lost myself in the we? Or am I paying so much attention to my individual self that the we is actually suffering and it needs attention? And so I think that's a question to ask any person who is in a relationship. But I think the stagnancy comes from boredom. And I find that most people really enjoy having some form of stability, and they also want novelty. And so finding that dynamic within a relationship takes effort. And a lot of times the foundation is what drives us to be in relationship, right? It's secure. We have someone to come home to. We know we're going to get cuddles. We have a date for our holiday party.
Yeah.
We know that we're not going to be alone at family dinners, on and on and on and on. You have somebody to help you pay the rent. Those are like foundation pieces of our lives. And something I want to put a circle around and come back to is just the security of that. But the stagnancy piece comes from not making effort to create newness and novelty with each other. Yeah. And that does take effort. And a lot of times within eroticism, or I'll just say sexuality or sex, we have a specific edge of our learning, right? We learned all the things we learned, about sex up until that point of the relationship, right? So all the skills we learned in our teen years or our 20s or 30s, whatever it was, until we settled down with that person at age, let's just say 30, without having new information coming in, like we're that person. And unless you bring in new information, at me as your partner and you as mine, how will we grow? How will we create newness with each other? It's sort of like, it's just not that possible.
Because I can't imagine anyone wanting to stay the same in a relationship. And
Some
I feel
people
like
do.
that.
Some people do.
Yeah. So what is the resistance to then evolving or growing in a relationship?
I think it comes down to one simple thing, actually, which is, when we ruffle the feathers of a relationship that has a foundation, is we're fucking with our security. We're fucking with our security. And so we go, you know what? I had a good life where we travel once a year. We've got okay sex, once a month or, once a year, whatever it is. Our families love each other. Like we've got a good friend group. I have this really big desire in the bedroom to ask, but you know what? I'm just going to keep it quiet, because what if I get rejected here? Like, what does that mean for my security? Not just our relationship, but my personal security. Like, am I going to get thrown out? And like, do I have to find a new place to live? And really, it kind of comes down to our lizard brain again, of like feeling like, oh my God, that's going to fuck with the foundations that I built my life around.
So any new desires or new expressions that come out, we're hesitant to share those, or some people can be, because of the risk that might be.
Yeah.
So I guess this could also be, someone wanting to go back to school or changing careers or wanting a dog. Any kind of newness, I imagine, would probably shake it up.
Yeah. And I think there's something specific about naming sexual desires or changing erotic needs as we evolve as humans. And as we evolve, I'm going to say like our core erotic themes, which is a definition from Peter Levine, is something that we have really throughout our lives. It's just that we don't necessarily access it right away. And maybe we access it at a certain point, but we sort of put it away in lieu of this new relationship. Like I've worked with clients who, were super kinky, and they are super kinky. And then they find a partner that kind of meets all the other boxes, checks all the boxes: money, family, pedigree, social affluence. And that person is not into that. So they go, you know what? I'm going to put that away. And then, 3, 7, 10, 20 years down the road, they're like, fuck, I really missed that part of myself. And I never shared that with my partner. And now, like, I'm fucking like looking at my mortality now.
Yeah.
Right? 40, 50-year-old human is looking at like sort of like midlife, moving towards the end of life, and going, wow, I miss that part of myself. And I either need to come to terms with my partner and let them know so that they can try and meet me there, or I need to find that space for me to express myself in this way. And for some people, it gets so heavy that it's like it becomes an urgency.
Well, I like the way that you described it. Is like it's a part of themselves, that desire, that experience, who they are, gets to be expressed through these practices and rituals, and they put it in a box, like you said, for 20 years. So how does that then impact an individual who is having to hide that for so long?
I know it impacts people in a really big way. It's sort of like it's like little nicks or like little razor marks on the soul, really, of I'm just going to put that away. I'm going to put it away. My body is asking, I'm going to put it away. And it has effects on people's health, their wellness, their overall wellness. It has effects on people's psychosomatic wellness. Yeah.
How can you define that for the
really,
listeners?
like their
here?
psyche, their spirit and their mind. And, that takes its toll over time. It might be small in the beginning, but all those small little nicks of saying, no, I'm not listening. No, I don't want to hear you. You go down. You're not allowed. Nobody wants you. Right. Which is like, these are like parts of ourselves that we're literally speaking to. And if you're, looking at like IFS, internal family systems, or even shadow work, a lot of that is really like these parts of ourselves that have, or almost like entities.
Imagine if that's happening to one person in the relationship, those little nicks, then the we, as you said, the third part is impacted as well. What have you noticed being impacted there in the we when one person doesn't get to express themselves that way?
It's a false we. My teaching partner says, don't pay out of somebody else's piggy bank for them, which is sort of like, don't say your partner's no for them, right? For you to like keep something that big from them is also acknowledging that they can't handle you. They can't handle it. They're not compassionate enough, or they don't love you enough to meet you there.
You're not even giving them the opportunity to meet you or who you are.
Yeah. You're showing up as your presenter, like a presentation of yourself. And, that's not really fair to you or to them. So the question really becomes around like authenticity. Like, can you show up authentically with this person? And look, if you have to hide parts of yourselves to be in a relationship with someone, the question becomes, is this about me or is it about them? Like every time I share something, do they put me down or tell me that that's gross, or they yuck my yum? And so I feel actually fearful to share things that are personal and close to my heart and my spirit. And so I close that side of myself. And so, to speak more about how we expand it's sort of like when I come to you, say we're in a relationship, and I say, I have this fantasy, or I have this desire. I want to go, even if it's not sexual, it's like, I want to spend 3 weeks in Thailand this December, and I want to do it by myself. And you're like, well, why would you want to go without me? Like, are you cheating on me? What's that's one response. The other response would be something like, it's curious. Like, tell me more about why you want to take such time away. And is there a reason why you don't want me to come? Like, tell me more about this experience and what it means to you, which is a totally different response than the first one. That the second one offers an opportunity to speak and to hear and to dialogue around something. And look, fantasy isn't always going to become reality. I think people need to realize that sometimes just speaking it can be enough.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. In a couple dynamic or in a relationship, when we're speaking about the we, of understanding that if we are in a place of co-creation, if we always think of like, let's co-create something that actually like turns us both on. Yeah. Like then we're kind of like all three entities are winning.
Yeah. Because I want to talk about this for a second, because what you just said is sometimes the actualization of the fantasy, the actual doing of the fantasy doesn't need to happen. Sometimes just the talking about it helps. And I'm curious if you could say just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I have an online course called Invitations to Intimacy. And one of the modules is around fantasy exploration. And this is something that I often do with clients. But, if you were to write out a fantasy for yourself, just like you're telling yourself a story, if I were to go back and read it, and I would start to look for buzzwords or things that just pop out to me, I can start to understand somebody's core erotic theme, which is really like what the turn on is, like what the desires are. And then from there, I actually can create a number of different fantasies or narratives that track or speak to those core erotic themes that may not be the fantasy that was described in the first place, but that person is still getting those needs met.
Yeah.
And so
going back to that example of Thailand, for instance, going there for 3 weeks alone, I might be able to satisfy that fantasy by going to Mexico for a week on my own.
Or Topanga.
To pay it. True. For the weekend, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So,
It's like it's about me getting away. It's about me having time alone. It's about me having self-reflection. It's about me exploring new lands where nobody knows me. Right? Those would be like more like the underbelly of the actual fantasy, which is I want to go to Thailand
yeah.
by
But in our
myself.
relationship here, if I was just meeting you with a, oh my gosh, you don't love me, you want to go without me, why? I'm putting up a wall to even being able to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Whereas if I met with curiosity in your second example, asking you, well, why is it that you want to do that? I can probably discover more about why that is. And
Yeah.
again, like you said, that co-creating, which I want to talk about more in a little bit.
Yeah, like from a co-creation standpoint, you might even say, you know what, I hear that you want to be alone. What if I went with you? I mean, that sounds really exciting for me too. What if I went with you for the first week and then we parted ways for a week and then had our own time and then came back together for the third week and like compared notes?
Yeah. In our fake relationship, I'm really happy with that option because I want to have fun too. So
Yeah. And so,
yeah.
and that person might say, you know what, I love that idea and no, I really need the time away. Or yeah, I that's a great idea. Let's try it out.
Yeah.
But at least like you're creating dialogue and curiosity around what each other wants and also why.
Yeah. And so in this stagnancy in a relationship, at what point do couples typically come to you? Is it like on the verge of crisis, or do they recognize that it's a stagnancy problem, or are other things happening in their lives that they're like, we need support?
You know, it's one of two things. I do work with couples who feel really solid in their romantic and interpersonal relationships, but are still kind of struggling in their sexual relationship. So basically, you know, they're strong. They're a strong couple, but for some reason they're not connecting erotically. And sometimes they never have, right? It's never been a strong suit for them. I also see couples who are sort of like on the verge of like, this is a really big sticking point for us, the sex. And it's sort of like sometimes it's a last ditch effort of can we find some new skills to reconnect with each other and find our way to each other? And then there are other couples who are like, you know what, we love each other. We have great sex already. And we just want to learn new ways. Or there's a specific, like, I do teach a lot of kink and BDSM with clients. And so clients will come to me and say, you know, we like this and we want to learn more. Like, how can we expand this practice and this connection with each other? And can you offer us new tools and new ways to play with it? So there's a couple different kind of couples that come work with me, but those are kind of like the main three.
And then where do you begin with these couples? So like, how do you start rebuilding passion or excitement into a relationship?
You know, for couples that have been together for a really long time, rebuilding passion, oh, that's a hard one because again, when you have the kind of intimacy that you have with someone that you've been with for 20 years, finding a passion, it's almost slim to none. What you can do is you can find new curiosities around each other and new ways to play with each other. And it's a continued effort. It's not like, oh, we come and did this thing and we found something new and like, there it is. Yeah. That's not what a yoga practice is or a gym practice is. Like, you keep going back to the gym and you push yourself further and you lift different weights and you try different modalities of exercise. And same thing with yoga. It's an ongoing practice and sexuality needs to be looked at similarly.
Yeah. Well, that's a very honest answer because I think a lot of people get their hopes up or they feel the pressure to have this passionate relationship 20 years into their marriage. And I don't know whether it's social media, comparison, what they're watching on TV, but I think that the pressure's there.
Yeah. I mean, passion literally translates into suffering. That's what that word means.
How so?
Passion means I love this so much I'm willing to suffer for it.
Oof.
Yeah, that's what that means. So when you say passion of the Christ, it's like Christ loved humans so much that he was willing to suffer, right?
Hold on. How did I not know that? Sorry. you love it so much that you're willing to suffer for it. So
Yeah.
when you're asking for passion in a relationship, it's you're really asking to love something so much that you're willing to suffer for it. Maybe you don't need to suffer.
Yeah, I think, for some people, they do love to suffer, and like the longing and the wanting is part of their erotic signature. But I think, words are powerful, and, rethinking how we talk about some of these things is important. I think couples that have been together a long time, or even like 3 years in, to create an intimacy with each other that's based on altruism, that's based on open communication, that's based on um, really like a deep understanding and a wanting to meet each other. Like that is something really, really beautiful that you cannot replace. And so, yeah, I could go get another partner who I've never met before and have this thrilling experience. But it's like, and that can't replace what I have with you. And it's sort of like this, comparing a Michelin restaurant to a McDonald's meal. It's like, do I love both? I do. Sometimes I really love a McDonald's filet of fish with some nuggets and some fries. And,
That's
I
some
go
sweet
all
and
in.
sour sauce.
I
Ugh.
go all in, but not very often because I get a stomach ache afterwards. And do I prefer the Michelin restaurant? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And that's not always available. So it's sort of like looking at some of these things as different instead of better or worse.
And so you also mentioned the importance then in stagnancy to discover, or I guess rediscover yourself and your individual lives. Can you say more about what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, so to look at like core erotic themes, for example, and things that you really love, you might have been a musician in your youth, but really have put that away to focus on your career. What would it look like to re-embolden that part of yourself, to pick up the guitar or piano or voice lessons, to find a new, I'm going back to the word passion, ah, to find a new like zest for something that was an old love of yours, and have a new fling with it, right? When I'm talking about eroticism, I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about all the ways that we place our life force energy out into the world, and also like how we receive it. So music and singing for me is a part of my erotic expression, and it's also a way that I receive eroticism. Like it lights me up, it fills me, it's nutritive for me. And also when I sing, it's how I express, when I sing to someone or for someone, it's like an ultimate gift of my love and appreciation and adoration. And so, looking at some of these things that have always been a part of us, or maybe you've never been a singer, but it's been a desire, go do it. And then bring that back to your partnership.
Yeah. Well, I know when I'm in my yoga practice doing my hot yoga, my Bikram yoga, I just feel stronger. I feel happier. I feel more present and alive. And I know the energy is
Mm-hmm.
impacting my partner and the we that we have. And I think it usually inspires them as well, right? Oh, like, that's cool. You got this little pep in your step. Maybe I should be a little curious about some things that will do the same to me. And I think we don't realize how much influence we have in the
Yeah.
partnership there. So,
That's kind of an ultimate goal in partnership, is to be in a partnership where your actions inspire each other. You know, that is not always the case. Sometimes you're in partnership with someone where your actions outside of each other threaten them, where it's like, oh, you're doing all these things for yourself, and I feel like I'm being left behind. And then it needs to become a conversation of like, how can I take you with me? Like, I'd like for you to come to yoga with me if you feel like you're not being active enough. Come with me. Come with me to the gym. You feel like you put on an extra few pounds that you're not wanting. Come with me to the gym. I'll go with you. I'll support you in that. Or you feel like your libido is really low. Let's decentralize penetrative sex, and let's just focus on erotic massage with each other for the next month, 3 months, whatever it is. Can we get back to each other in kind of softer ways?
what resistance, if any, do you find in people who just don't want to have their own life? They're just like comfortable being in the we.
Those people aren't at my door.
So you
Yeah.
don't have that experience, yeah.
If you're not that person, we probably won't be working together, right?
Because I imagine that's probably bordering more the codependence.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit before this call, but I find that a lot of people um, they understand codependency as intimacy, and they are
Mm.
not the same thing. So when we get so enmeshed with someone that our happiness, our joy, our whole life is dependent on that one person, that is not intimacy. That's codependency, right?
Yeah.
So I just want people to maybe think about how those are different, because I think when people talk about intimacy and they want more intimacy with their partner, or they want more intimacy in their life, really what they're talking about is they want deeper connection.
Mm.
And that is also different than codependency. But
Yeah.
deeper connection sometimes leads to also more intense physical interactions, which in sex is what we're wanting. We're wanting something that's has the excitement of a new lover and the
Mm.
stability of a 20-year relationship. We want all the
It's
things,
almost like the impossible.
and it's
Maybe.
not impossible. And
Uh-huh.
and also, we are demanding humans. We want what we want, and we strive for the impossible oftentimes.
So in this journey of recovering from stagnancy in a relationship is, finding yourself, igniting your own zest to life. And then once you have that, what are some ways that couples can reignite the zest in the relationship itself?
When there has become a lot of codependency in a relationship, and specifically one person is dependent on the other for financial stability and freedom, for social interactions, it becomes really hard to dissect some of those things, especially when that person is really comfortable and really likes all the benefits of being with the other person, who's sort of like the carrier. And it gets really kind of lonely and old to be the carrier all the time. And so it becomes a question of how can there be a little bit more equity? And also, what is the charge for both of those people? What is the erotic charge? And I do mean erotic charge. What do you get off on being the person who's always in the caretaker role, or always in the role of being cared for? And what would happen if you switched? How fucking uncomfortable would that be? And what kind of learning would there be there for both of you?
Yeah. Well, because then you get so ingrained in that role, but you connected the erotic charge to the role that they're playing as either the
Good.
caretaker or the one who's kind of along for the ride.
Yeah.
I how does that show up? What erotic connection is there to that role?
This kind of comes from looking at shadow work. And there's a book called Existential Kink by Carolyn Murphy, which is a brilliant look at connecting shadow work with eroticism, and kind of the charge that we get out of moving into specific shadows, or getting our needs met through kind of leaky ways. Shadow work is really about making the unconscious conscious. And so in this specific example, for someone who's always in a caretaker role, if you're always in a caretaker role, there must be something that is desirable or attractive about that, or unattractive about being someone who's taken care of, that keeps you coming back into that space. And so what is it? What is it that you get off on? And can you, instead of in your everyday life, and this is existential kink, of letting that kind of disrupt things or happen unconsciously, can you consciously say, what I love about being the caretaker is that I'm in control, I'm in a power position, I could leave anytime I want, and those are really valuable to me. What I don't like about being in the caretakee role is that I am powerless. I feel like I could be left at any time. So these are taking a look at some of those things there. Also, if I were to be in a caretakee role, being taken care of, what could be there for me? What could be there for me? Not having to effort as much, allowing someone to step into a caretaker role for me, which might be nutritive to our relationship? And could I allow that in erotic space where I may not allow that in a relational aspect?
Yeah. And switching roles, you're really challenging deep-rooted coping mechanisms, habits, like identities of who you are. And so that's personal growth. That's not just like relational growth and growing together. Like that's a lot of personal work you're
Oh
doing.
yeah. People think that they're coming here for sex therapy. And they are, like that is, but when you really dive into people's sexual hunger and sexual dysfunctions and sexual misgivings and lack and their desires, you are looking at a whole person. You are looking at their childhood wounds. You are looking at their relationship wounds. You are looking at their relationship with money. You are looking at their relationship to everything. Whereas a lot of times when we're doing, I'm just say ayahuasca and medicine journeys, it's very like heart-centered. And those are beautiful parts of work. And even in traditional psychotherapy, we're like working with the mind. But a lot of times we're not putting focus on the genitals. It's like waist up. And again, from a shadow perspective of like when we're waist up, we're not paying attention to what's down here. And it's like, well, we've got a whole rest of half of our body down here. And so what is it about that that's shameful, or we don't want to talk about, or our therapist doesn't want to talk about it, or our ayahuasca person doesn't want to address it because it's too edgy, or that person, the facilitator, hasn't done enough of their own work to be able to hear you in an open enough way without judging you or feeling crunchy themselves.
Oof, oof, oof. Okay, hold on. That was powerful moment. That's so good because you just pointed out how a lot of therapy is focused on the head and a lot of somatic work focused on the heart, but how much work is focused on the genitals? And how much of that is rooted in the shame around sexuality in our society and our culture? And if you have a practitioner who is ashamed of their genitals, yeah, you're not going to get to explore why you still have shame there. Or,
Yeah.
So
I mean, I do have clients that come and I say, do you have a therapist you're working with? And they say, yeah. And I say, great. I invite you to process this with them when you leave. Oh, well, my therapist doesn't like to talk about sex with me. And I say, why not? Well, they're not comfortable with that. And then I say, it's time for you to find a new therapist. Sex therapy is actually another certification on top of your psychotherapy degree that you have to get through ASECT or other organizations. It really, literally should be everyone. It's like saying, I don't talk about family issues. It's like, are we whole people, or are we just, this is such a Western thing. You go to the you go to the ear doctor. Well, what if the ear doctor, like something with your ear, actually is something to do with your ear, nose, and your throat, which is also part of your face? And what if your ear, nose, and throat is something to do with your belly? And so even like from a Western medical perspective of compartmentalizing the body parts and, experts or things like that, it's like, what if we looked at the body as a holistic expression and an organism that is, all these parts are working together.
And so bring that awareness into the genitals, then how might that impact the way that I show up for myself or in a relationship?
Such a big way. Because you're opening a channel to all your systems, right? If you're working from your belly center up all the time and you're just not acknowledging your genitals, of course you're not going to be integrating sexuality into your life. So, the work that I'm doing, as much as it is about sex, it is about the whole body and about incorporating and looking at ourselves as like an entire organism. Like my sex is not different than my work or my relationship. Like my sex is with me all the time. Like when I walk into a room, my fucking sex is on my body. It's not like I'm putting that away to go to a restaurant or putting it away to show up for my business meeting. Like I am an erotic body all the time. And look, there's certain ways in how I express that are sort of like that's not appropriate for this container or for this discussion, but my eroticism is my aliveness. It's not necessarily, I'm not wanting to have sex with you, but I'm also not going to dampen myself and shut off this channel of energy that's constantly moving through me.
Sounds like you're connected so much to that eroticism in your life because it's a part of your expression. Not necessarily that you want to walk into any room and be sexually active with people,
Right.
but because that is part of who you are.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
when you see somebody enter a room and you go, oh, there's just something about them that is intoxicating or attractive, they are connected. They are connected.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking about how they are perceived. They're not thinking about, oh, I wonder how everyone is, wondering about me. And it's like, no, I'm showing up as myself to be received here.
So, scenario, because what if I have this big important board meeting and, I think I shouldn't be in my eroticism. Like, why would I want to do that?
Look, if you're walking into a board meeting and you're at the center and you're presenting something, to be in your erotic body, to be in your aliveness and present something that you feel alive around is going to affect the entire field around you, right? So if you're in a situation where you're having to pitch something or share something or present something that isn't in alignment with who you are as a person, it will most definitely resonate with that field. I remember I used to work for Yahoo, and I was an executive assistant to the head of business development, and for a brief time, the head of public relations. And we had an all-hands meeting, and the SVP of new media came to Santa Monica, and he presented. And he said a lot of nothing. And the whole crowd was just sort of like, meh. And afterwards, he said, are there any questions? And people asked questions. He did not answer a single one of them. He talked around them. And afterwards, my boss said to me, what did you think of that all hands? And I said, it was fine. And she said, fine. And I said, well, honestly, he didn't say anything. And every question that he was asked, he didn't answer. He said something else that actually made no sense. And she said, yep, I taught him that. My point is, if you're in a role where you are having to deliver messages that aren't in alignment with who you are as a person, like that also takes a toll. That also takes a toll of that you're not in your alignment with your erotic self because it's not in alignment with who you are, where you want to be. Kind of having to present something in lieu of money or status or whatever that is, and that will take a toll eventually.
So it sounds like just through all of this, getting to know yourself deeper, incorporating all parts of who you are, of your body, of that shadow self, you're able to bring more of yourself into these spaces versus castrating yourself before walking into a meeting. Right?
Yeah, and there's a colleague of mine named Kenneth Play. He's a brilliant sex educator, and he wrote a book called Beyond Satisfied. And in it, there's a chapter that's called Living Your Authentic as Fuck Life. And he talks about how you can actually look at how you're doing this. And he says, if you look at your erotic desires, and let's broaden it, just your desires and your behaviors and your belief systems. And if you look at all three of those things, if you're to make 3 columns and then track if they are all in alignment with each other, then you're living a really authentic as fuck life. If your beliefs are out of alignment with your actions and your actions are out of alignment of your desires, then something is off. And it's like, how do I get back to a place of living an authentic as fuck life is having those 3 things in alignment with each other.
Good stuff here, Court. Now, are there any additional, just bringing it back to the zest in the bedroom and any other tangible tips that listeners can take away and practice today with their partner?
I'm actually going to take a step back because, for people who are not in relationship, I think there's steps that you can take to ensure more compatibility with a person when you do get into a relationship.
Yeah.
And something of that nature is to look at what your love languages are, how you express love and how you receive love, and then also looking at your erotic signature or your erotic blueprints, which is a work of Jaya. And this, sometimes your erotic blueprints are not in alignment with your love languages. And that is perfectly okay. So you might really love to be adored in life, right? To receive gifts and praise and words of affirmation. And then in the bedroom, you love to be defiled and defamed and told you're, a fucking slut. For somebody to say that, you might go, well, those are two different things. It's like, actually, no, they're very similar. They are the same thing. It's just on opposite sides of the erotic mirror, right? Over here, I want this, and over here, I want this. So to understand who you are as a whole person from a love perspective and a relational perspective, and also from an erotic and a sexual place, we often put a lot of weight on the first part. These are the things I want from a partner. I want financial stability. I want somebody who is a really good partner. I want somebody who loves my mom. I want somebody who is socially acceptable and we present well as a couple. Oftentimes we go, I want really good sex with them, but we don't talk about like what it is that you want in the bedroom. And some people don't even know. So no, I like kinky sex. I like to be tied up and spanked, or I really like vanilla sex and I like energy flow and playing with breath and movement and dancing. These are like really important to me. And for couples getting together with each other to actually name the top 3 things that are important to them in relationship is a valuable tool. Because for me, sex is at the top. And then it goes relationship and communication. And then it goes capacity for curiosity. Those are my 3 things. Money's not even on the table. But if I'm meeting somebody and their number 1 is money, and I don't have a lot of money, and sex is not even on their list, their number 3, there's just like a mismatch. And it's not to say I can't love you, but it's like, if sex is number 1 for me, I need to find that connection with my partner, and you don't want that at all. There's just a mismatch there.
Yeah. And the incompatibility in values, I think, is just going to cause more tension, especially long term, as you said, things just continue to get stagnant, like where someone.
Those things change over time too. So even in long-term relationships, of coming back to the table and saying, what is important to you now?
Yeah.
What are the top 3 things in our relationship that are most important to you? Okay. And, it's not even necessarily out in the world, but maybe just like as you as a couple, maybe sex with you as my partner actually isn't that important, but I still need sex out here because it's still in my number 1, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually, in our bond, it's not the most important. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just acknowledging what is.
Yeah. Whether it's sex or going to Thailand on your trip. Yeah, it's got to be a part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think is the biggest misconception in the way that we approach relationships in our society, in our culture?
I want to go back to codependency a little bit because there is such deep and ominous pressure for our partner to be the one and only person that like checks all of our boxes. And that's a big task to fill, right? You're supposed to be best friend. You're supposed to be, romantic, and you're supposed to be the hottest lover. And you're also supposed to be a great parent and a good son. And,
I'm tired, Court.
Yeah. And physically fit, and also love travel and be a good planner. And you're supposed to also be good at your job. Yeah. It's just a lot of weight to put on one person. And so, again, going back to those things of like, these are the top 3 things that are really valuable to me in a relationship, in a partnership. And am I getting those? Are you that person for me?
To really being with the right person having those and aligned values is,
and like
is
being
really
with the right person is also so, God, who knows? I mean, my right person might be in Indonesia right now and I will never meet them as my soulmate.
uh-huh.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But like I'm dealing with the people who are in my ecosystem here in West Hollywood and during my travels. And, it sort of comes down to I don't know if this person is my soulmate necessarily, but this is the person that makes me happy on a daily basis. This is the person who I can be myself with. Like I don't have to manage myself or wear masks for them. Like I can let down some of those guards and be my authentic self with them. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's all we want, really. I mean, it's all I want. Maybe some good sex and a trip to Thailand would be
There
good
we
too.
go.
But
We're
yeah.
always going back to Thailand.
All right, Court. Well, how can people connect with you, get a hold of you? What do you have going on?
Sure. I have a workshop coming up in March 6th to the 9th in Joshua Tree. It is for LGBTQ men called Connect. It's a weekend of really exploring different forms of erotic connection that can lead to sex and don't necessarily need to. We're going to be working with communication styles, interpersonal and transpersonal group erotic experiences, as well as exploring power dynamics and the kind of like the root of BDSM or DS play, dominance and submission, as well as some breath work, tantric principles, movement, and there's a pool and a jacuzzi there, so it'll be
Perfect.
nice to
Sold.
just get a weekend away. So that's coming up in March. I also have an online community and program called Invitations to Intimacy, which for people that are not in California and can't afford or don't have the capacity or just not ready to come to an in-person event, that's a great place to start. There's embodiment exercises, movement practices, meditations, really home play assignments, writing exercises. It's a 7-module course that really is designed to get to know yourself better.
Yeah. And where can we find more information about this if we're ready to take that step?
Sure. My website, www.thebodyvox.com, thebodyvox.com.
Perfect. All right. Go check it out, friends. And thank you for joining me, Court.
Thank
Great
you.
conversation. I'm
Thank
excited
you.
to go be aware of my genitals for the rest of the day. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Queer Conscious Podcast, where we explore how love feeds us, heals us, and gives us life. I'm your host and queer love coach, Nathan Serrato. But remember that the conversations that we're having here today are not a replacement for working with a licensed therapist, professional coach, or mental health practitioner. These conversations are for entertainment and education purposes only. But if you are dealing with some big challenges and you're thinking about seeking some professional support, it is one of the most empowering things that you can do for yourself. You can visit queerconscious.com for more information on how to do that. Now, if you love today's episodes and you want more episodes like this, I need your help. Please leave a 5-star rating and review. That's going to help me to bring you more high-quality content and interviews. So until then, take care of yourself and don't forget to let love in.